I shouldn't have done that then, huh? Sorry.
Hi, everybody. Scott's just kicked us off. Thanks, Scott. Happy
Sorry.
Tuesday, everyone. It's all right. Happy Tuesday, everyone. Welcome to another Dux-Soup webinar. I'm Jo Henderson, a member of the marketing team, and joining me today are our Head of Sales, Scott Wright, and Head of Professional Services, Giles Garnett. If anyone wants to wave, please do. While we wait for people to join us today, I'm going to jump straight in and let you know about our upcoming live workshop. So if you joined us a couple of weeks ago when we had a technical glitch, I started to ramble on about it. And then Giles hopped back in. So starting next week, we're introducing our live Get Started with Dux-Soup workshop series, where Scott, Giles and I will be, we'll be taking you through the entire free trial cycle to help you or your colleagues and friends get the best from their 14-day free trial experience. We'll be showing you step-by-step how to install and set up Dux-Soup, and together we'll search and visit LinkedIn profiles, collate prospect lists, set up auto-connect actions, and start creating your first campaign. These sessions are going to differ from our usual webinars, as we will actually be guiding you how to do these things on your own devices during the session, so we can help by answering any of the questions as we go along the way. So these sessions would normally cost you just under $80 for the hour, and we're providing this for free. There'll be 2 time slots to choose from. We're going to have the usual time slot on a Tuesday at 4 p.m. And 4 p.m. GMT next Tuesday, and then we'll have another time slot at 8 p.m. GMT on Thursday. So the idea is you pick one or the other depending on where you live and which suits your time zone. I'll share the details and the links with you once we get going, and I'll also pop back at the end to remind you all. Part 2 of the workshop will then be the following week on the same days and times, and that will be to focus on the more advanced features available. So back to today's Maximising LinkedIn session. Any content we refer to or links we think might be useful will be shared with you all in the chat function. If you have any questions, pop them in the question box, and those I don't answer during the session, I'll put to Scott and Giles at the end. The video of today's session will be sent to you later today, and it will be uploaded on the website as well later this week. And as I said, I'll be back at the end to run through any questions and also remind you again about the workshops. So stick around after the Q&A if you've joined us partway through my ramble. Anyway, I'm sure you've all had enough of me, so I'm going to hand straight over to Scott now to guide you through which LinkedIn plan is right for you. Thanks, Scott.
Awesome. Hey, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Joe, for being able to let us know about the workshops for the free trial that are going to be coming up. Make sure to go ahead and sign up for that, because I think a lot of people on this call will most likely be downloading the free trial. In the free trial, while yes, it sounds fantastic, there are some things that I think should be known about the free trials. In terms of how long it is, how do you go about that, and actually we'll cover a little bit about that in this actual conversation. But that said, for today's webinar, what we're going to be talking about is maximizing LinkedIn and which plan is right for you. There's multiple different LinkedIns, right? From your free profile to premium to sales nav to recruiter and everything in between. And so being able to understand, figure out, and know which one you should be paying for or not paying for is something definitely worth a webinar in itself. So for today's agenda, I will start off with an introduction, then talk a little bit about identifying the right LinkedIn plan with all the different options and activities, sort of limits that you could do with each one, right? So for instance, how many invites can you send on a sales nav versus a regular LinkedIn, or a sales nav versus recruiter? Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. They're pretty much the same, at least for connection requests, maybe not for InMails. But if you want to know how many InMails you can send between these ones or that ones, this is what I'll be talking about. Then I'll move on to talk a little bit about account safety and best practices. Then unlocking sort of key features, leveraging LinkedIn with Dux-Soup as well, and then any key takeaways, and also some Q&A at the end if we have time. Wonderful. So introduction. With this, LinkedIn has limits and different features associated with each one, right? So there's LinkedIn Premium, there's LinkedIn Career Premium, there's LinkedIn Business Premium, There's LinkedIn Sales Navigator, there's LinkedIn Sales Navigator Core, LinkedIn Sales Navigator Advanced, LinkedIn Sales Navigator Recruiter Lite, Recruiter Full, right? There's so many different plans, right? And so we'll be covering, I'll have a chart here in just a minute for you guys to take a look at and sort of talk through each one of them. And then sort of what is the difference between a free LinkedIn versus a paid? What do you get on these, right? What are some of the things that you should be looking at, right? Some of these, hint, hint, nudge, nudge, some of the paid profiles that you'll be able to get, you'll be able to visit more profiles or maybe send out InMails versus not on others. Do you need a paid version of LinkedIn to use automation? So we're all here because we're associated with LinkedIn automation, hence Dux-Soup, right? And so because we're all associated with Dux-Soup and understand it to some degree of understanding that there's automation in LinkedIn, do you need a paid version of LinkedIn or not, right? The hint, hint, nudge, nudge is that you do not need that. You can actually get away with a free version with Dux-Soup, but there are benefits to having a paid version. And so I'll cover that here in this conversation as well. And then lastly is I'll talk a little bit about account safety and how it differs a little bit depending on which plan you go ahead and choose. So jumping right into it, this is a little bit of the core of everything that we'll be talking about today. So identifying the LinkedIn plan options and activity. So with these, you can see up here at the top of our graph, it says free, premium, sales nav, and recruiter. And then on the left-hand side, it says pricing, profile visits, connection requests, and messages to first, which means messages to your first degree connections, and the number of InMails, right? So we'll go through this really quickly, and let me talk about each one. So for the free LinkedIn, it obviously doesn't cost you anything. You can set up an account for free on linkedin.com and go ahead and start that up. As soon as you do, you can download also the free trial of Dux-Soup Turbo and be able to utilize that. But on a free plan, after you get out of the probationary period, and if you guys are curious about that, I'm not covering that on this conversation, so do a little bit of research. But when you create a new LinkedIn, you are usually in a probationary period for a certain amount of time. And so that should be taken into consideration. But for the most part, the fact that it is free. Now, you can usually visit around 80 to 100 profiles per day on a free LinkedIn account. Now, that is fine and dandy for the most and the majority of people. And if you want to visit more profiles or see the more results, then you're going to want to need to upgrade into a larger account. Also, staying on the free, the connection requests. On average, across the board, you can send 100 invites per week. Now, let's get specific here. On a free LinkedIn account, so you're not paying for anything, you can send roughly about 20, assuming you're out of the probationary period too, you can send about 20 invites per day. Now, if you want to put a message in your invite, when you're sending it to them, you can send about 5 of those a month. On top of that, you can only send out, of those 5, they can only be 200 characters or less, which is, I mean, I'll save this for a rant for another time, but it's definitely a little weird that LinkedIn would flex in a way to be able to show you that you only have 200 characters and not 300. But again, this is for free LinkedIn accounts. So you can send about 5 personalized invitations a month, meaning that you can put a message with them, or about 20 a day, assuming that you do not put a message with those. Then when it comes to your first messages to your first, this means messages to your first degree connections. And of those, you can usually send around the area of 50 to 75 per day. Now, if you do upgrade to a premium subscription of LinkedIn, which means either LinkedIn Career or LinkedIn Business, LinkedIn Career is about $30 a month, LinkedIn Business is about $60 a month. It increases your profile visits from 100 to about 150 to 200 per day. On top of that, you can steadily send out 20 to 25 connection requests per day, or up to about 100 to 150 connection requests per week. And that is including or excluding a personalized invitation. Hence the reason it doesn't say personalized per month on the premium version there. Furthermore, you can send about 75 to 100 direct messages to people you're already connected to per day. Then with these, you do get the added benefit of small level of number of InMails you can actually send. So in the career version, you get about 5 InMails a month you can send. And on the business version, you get about 15 InMails that you can now send associated with those corresponding licenses that you go ahead and purchase. So free LinkedIn and LinkedIn Premium there's an old movie that said the same but different. They're very similar in the fact that the premium version opens up the ability for you to send out the normal number of invites you would want to send out on a daily basis, which is 20 to 25 per day. Furthermore, you can do a significant more number of visits and interactivity. So it's kind of meant for networking purposes. Now, when you get to Sales Navigator is when things start to change a little bit. So with Sales Navigator, it is significantly more expensive, but comes with a whole new interface. And so there are 2 versions of Sales Navigator that are worth calling out, right? There is the core version, which I think most people are familiar with. This is the version that you get, and it takes you to a whole new site. You can interact with it. You get the in-depth searching capabilities. You can also create and save lead lists or searches, and so on and so forth. For an extra $50 a month, you can get Sales Navigator Advanced. Now, Advanced comes in clutch if you can afford it and you have the means to do so. Because Sales Navigator Advanced allows you the ability to create and share lead lists. Now, share being a key point of what I'm saying here. In the Sales Navigator Advanced version, you can create lead lists and searches that you can share amongst each other or exclude amongst each other. So for example, on this conversation, if Joe, Giles, and I were on the same exact team at an organization and we had Sales Navigator Advanced, what I could do is create a search or a lead list inside of Sales Navigator, and then so can Joe and so can Giles. They can share those lead lists with each other or searches, and then you can also exclude those lead lists or searches. So when Giles shares his lead list with me on Sales Nav, I can go ahead and exclude that from my Sales Navigator search, which can be very useful. You can also think of it in more broader terms for things like customers, maybe. So if you have a list of current companies or customers that you want to be able to ensure that you are not touching, that can also be an area of it. Furthermore, it drastically increases the number of profile visits you can do per day, which is about 500 on average that you could do per day for the Sales Navigator version. However, connection requests still stay the same for this as well. So the number of connection requests that you can do is still about 20 to 25 per day. This is also the default number that we have inside of the options by default inside of Dux-Soup. So when you download Dux-Soup for the first time and use the free trial, you'll see that it's set to 25 per day. That is under the assumption that you have some sort of a paid version of LinkedIn, like Premier Sales Navigator, to do so. Messages to your first degree connection, you can send up to about 250 per day, and then InMails, you get granted 50 per month. Now, those 50 per month can accumulate up to a total of 150, or AKA 3 months, and then it will not accumulate after. So you can't have 200 InMails already stocked up. You can have 50 up to 150, depending if you use them or not. Now, there's another version of this, which is Recruiter for those people that are on this call. Recruiter is an interesting one. So usually it's anywhere between $170 to $270 per month or more. There's a lot of different options on how recruiters set up. This webinar is not meant to go into the different options so much. It's just meant to give you a sort of understanding and a range. And with those, you can you can visit about 600 plus profiles per day. However, you can still connect with, on average, the 25 connections per day. You can send out about 300 messages per day, and then you get on average about 30 InMails per month for light and 150 plus for full. Now, why do I say plus? Well, when it comes to InMails, you cannot purchase InMails in Sales Navigator, but you can in Recruiter, depending on which plan you're on. And so in some of the recruiter ones, you can purchase extra InMails. And if you wanted, you can purchase, 856,973 InMail messages if you wanted, or tokens or credits, right? So you can purchase as many as you'd like. However, these are the default parameters that this is meant to sort of show you down. Now, there is a huge caveat to everything that I'm saying on all of these sort of limitations. That caveat really depends on what is your overall social selling index. Everybody has a social selling index. You can see this social selling index for free if you just type in "what is my social selling index" into Google. It should take you to the right place. And so these are all averages. Unfortunately, other than what you can find on LinkedIn's website, they're not going to tell you exactly how many messages to your first degree you can send per day. They're also not going to tell you how many connection requests you can send per day, which is why I have an average number across the board for each of these. Now, for the most part, in the, let's call it the LinkedIn automation industry, what you can understand, or sort of a good way to sort of comprehend this, is that you can usually get away with about 100 per week in terms of connection requests. Can you do more? Possibly. It depends on what your social selling index is, and it also depends on other factors like how well are you integrating or sort of interacting with other people on LinkedIn. Are you liking posts? Are you commenting on posts? Are you sharing? Are you contributing? Are you doing all these other factors and exercises that you should be doing on LinkedIn, not just sending out connection requests? If you are, and assuming you are, you can most likely increase this from 25 to maybe 30 per day. Do the same thing, lather, rinse, repeat, and then slowly but surely increase. So all of these numbers that you're seeing here on this, except for the pricing for the most part, but profile visits, connection requests, first messages to your first degree, and well, I guess not InMails, but the middle three there, profile visits, connection requests, and messages to your first degree. These can be adjusted and will most likely be different depending on the level of what is considered on LinkedIn and your social selling index associated with other areas as well. Great. Moving on a little bit further here, unlocking key features. So of these, like if you have Sales Navigator versus Recruiter versus Premium, right? Each of these offer sort of significantly different values, but some of them do overlap with each other. For instance, if you do have the ability to send out InMails, there's been reports also, if you have Sales Navigator or Recruiter, you can send out, I'll put in air quotes here. You can't see my screen or my camera, but I'll put in air quotes here. You can send out 800 InMails per month to open link members or profiles. Open link means that people have deliberately gone in to their settings or options and have turned on the ability for you to send them an InMail, and it does not cost you a credit. There are a lot of people that do this. I would give it about a 15 to maybe 20% of all search results probably have open link profiles turned on. Now that is a gauge and an assumption there, so take that with a grain of salt. But with that, you can go ahead and target these people and only send out InMails to those people, and it will not cost you a credit. Dux-Soup also has a feature to be able to turn this on to where you're only targeting people who have open link members or open link profiles as well. Then the other portion of this is if you're not sure which version of these you should try, well, treat it like a buffet and try them all with these free trials of each of them. And so there is a free trial of LinkedIn Premium for the career and for the business version. So go ahead and download that. But if you want to get access to really deeper sort of searching capabilities and unlock a lot more, then I suggest doing the free trial of Sales Navigator. Now, if you interact with a client, customer, colleague, whoever it is, who currently has Sales Navigator, and you have not tried Sales Nav in the last, I think, 6 months or so, that friend or colleague can refer you to Sales Navigator. And when they do, and you accept that, you do not get 30 days, you get 60 days of Sales Navigator for free. So you get 2 months for free if you get referred to Sales Navigator from somebody who currently has a paid plan and hasn't tried it out in quite some time. Now, do be aware that the person who is referring this to you only has a certain amount of referrals as well on top of that. But feel free to ask people and see if it's something that you can go ahead and get access to. When you do get access then to that, you can start using Dux-Soup to do different things like scraping features or these other areas to be able to scrape some of these searches for different purposes. Account safety and best practices. So does purchasing Sales Navigator Premium or Sales Navigator allow you to send more connection requests or do more messages? Yes and no. For the most part, LinkedIn is looking for what is called rate of change for the most part, right? So if your profile over the last 3 months or so is used to sending 5 connection requests per week or per month, right? And all of a sudden you now start sending out about 100 per week, that's a rate of change that LinkedIn may see. In 2019, I was permanently restricted from LinkedIn, actually, and I was actually using Dux-Soup. Whoa, that sounds bad, right? Well, what I was doing is I was attempting to visit all of my first degree connections and scrape their data. And I had about 6,000 connections at that time. I visited about 2,000 profiles in the span of 3 days. So 2,000 one day, 2,000 the next, and 2,000 the day after that. That was a rate of change that LinkedIn identified and said, hey, that doesn't look human, right? So understanding your rate of change and increasing gradually is always going to lead to keys of success, right? So when you do start to use like an automation tool like Dux-Soup or whatnot, increasing gradually week over week is going to be your best practice, and not just coming out of the gate and being like, well, if I can send 25 connection requests with LinkedIn, I know that I can send out 50 manually. Well, you may not want to do that necessarily. Increase it gradually over time and in moderation, obviously. Then pay extreme close attention to your social selling index as well and understand, okay, are people accepting my connection? Am I interacting with them? Am I doing this? Am I doing that? And so on and so forth. Your social selling index, again, can be found if you just say, what is my social selling index, and Google that. I think it's one of the first 2 results that pop up. You can go ahead and click on one of those.
I've shared the link in the chat as well for everybody.
Perfect. Gorgeous, lovely. So yeah, go ahead and utilize that link, and everybody, I'll assume that everybody is going to hop off of this and not see my presentation for 2 seconds. Just kidding. But yeah, go ahead and take a look at that for 2 seconds. But Giles, who's on this call, once said this, and I really like this concept and idea, which is overall how you ensure that you are going to be safe on LinkedIn isn't totally necessarily about which plan you buy, right? Premium versus Sales Nav or Recruiter, right? Overall, it has to go down to, are you being a good LinkedIn citizen? And so with that comes the factor of liking comments and posts, or also commenting, posting stuff that's not just a rehash of what your company is posting, but also being meticulous and posting things that are associated with that. sharing, and then also just overall just contributing or being a good LinkedIn citizen, as Giles likes to call this, right? And then monitoring that as that pertains to your social selling index as well. Assuming that you are going by these, you're increasing gradually the number of connection requests, the number of first degree messages you can send out per day, and you're also paying for LinkedIn on any of these sort of platforms, is going to lead you to success. Now, if you're paying for LinkedIn Premium, or you want to pay a LinkedIn Premium at $30 a month, or you want to do Sales Navigator Advanced $150 a month, really comes down to what types of features are going to be relevant to you. Do you want the advanced features of being able to search in depth, or do you not, right? Is really what that comes down to. But LinkedIn is absolutely treating free profiles with a little bit more of a clenched fist than it is treating paid profiles. This concept seems oddly familiar to me, and if you don't mind, I make a small joke. It's kind of like LinkedIn is the mafia and they're charging us for extortion. I make that as a small joke, though. We love LinkedIn. Anyways, you get the idea. And so if you pay to play, you'll be able to unlock slightly more features. However, what is not true is that if you buy LinkedIn Sales Navigator or Recruiter, that you'll be able to now all of a sudden send 100 connection requests per month. That is not the case. You can normally visit more profiles and you have access to different searching capabilities, but account safety is still something that hangs in the loom. And even if you're paying for whatever program or license you're paying for on LinkedIn, LinkedIn can and will still shut you down if you are violating their terms outside of their agreement. So if anything to take away from this is, it's not an exact science. It's something that you need to take into consideration. And if you increase in moderation week after week and you're being an overall great LinkedIn citizen, then things will work out pretty well for you on those. And whether you go with Premium or Sales Nav is really up to you, depending on what you want to do. Now, with these, what you may want to incorporate and think about is how to automate this. No one on this call has currently a way to be able to monitor, or maybe they do, but no one has, like, at least LinkedIn doesn't have a way for you to monitor what is your acceptance rate, what is your response rate, right? LinkedIn doesn't give you that information. Dux-Soup can, right? And so you can leverage and also automate all of your activity and outreach that you would do on Dux-Soup, on LinkedIn with Dux-Soup. And so with Dux-Soup, when you have it installed and there is a free trial, you can automate all of your outreach. So sending connection requests, InMails, first degree follow-up messages, profile visits, endorsements. And you can also get KPIs and analytics associated with each one of these. And you can even tie these together underneath a campaign and apply that campaign and be able to measure the success of that campaign through Dux-Soup, which is not something you can currently do on LinkedIn. So if you're trying to measure your overall safety and which plan you should sort of go with, having Dux-Soup can help in many different ways there. On top of that, Dux-Soup also allows you to scrape profiles and searches for different purposes. So what I've seen some people do, if you're a growth hacker, as they call them, kind of like myself, what I've seen some people do is like, oh, Scott, I just don't want to pay in $100 a month for Sales Navigator. All right, yeah, no, I hear you. All right, that makes sense. Well, what you could do is you get the free trial. And what you could potentially do is get Dux-Soup and then build some sort of a search or a list. And during the free trial of LinkedIn Sales Navigator, and you have Dux-Soup also in the free trial, maybe, or you're also paying for it, you can scrape and or scan a search inside of Sales Navigator and then export that to a Google Sheet, a CSV, an Excel, something like that. Then you can split that up per persons at your company and then re-upload it through Dux-Soup and be able to target them. So now you're kind of using one Sales Navigator license for multiple different purposes, or for multiple different people in some of those cases, right? If you wanted to go about it in a growth hacking way. However, if you're able to get Sales Navigator Advanced, you get other features like sharing and excluding lists of different cases there. And on top of that, you can go ahead and make sure that Dux-Soup is ensure that you're going to be flying underneath LinkedIn's radar. So built into Dux-Soup is something called the LinkedIn limit. And what will happen is at some point, in fact, if I reference back to my previous slide, you may have seen that warning on the right-hand side that says you've reached your weekly invitation limit, right? Well, what will happen is if Dux-Soup detects that this window has appeared, right? And you will get this window if you are sending out, if you have Sales Navigator, if you have Recruiter, if you have Premium, or if you have a free LinkedIn account, right? If you do receive this warning, I don't even like, sorry, not to go on a tangent, but I don't even like calling it a warning sometimes. I kind of like to think about it as like, you have a lifeguard and they see you running around the pool and they blow their whistle and they're like, no running around the pool. But anyways, so if they see this, they'll kind of blow the whistle on you a little bit, right? What Dux-Soup will do is it will hit got it for you down there at the bottom. Then it will go to sleep and not send any more connection requests for up to 3 days. It will still send any follow-up messages that are scheduled or any of those types of things as well. So it can still continue on all the other steps and make sure that you're maximizing some of the activity as well on top of all those. But it will detect that for you and make sure that you're flying underneath LinkedIn's radar as well. Awesome. That said, for the key takeaways that I'd like you or to kind of take away from this conversation is that different LinkedIn accounts allow for different levels of activity when it comes to profile visits or when it comes to InMails, right? Overall, though, the number of connection requests that you can send out stays roughly about the same, depending on what your social selling index is and what it is that you can get away with. Regardless if you're spending $30 a month or $270 a month, how many connection requests you can get away with usually fluctuates. But this is a big differentiator between free profiles, which you can send a significantly less amount. And then obviously, as I mentioned, the limits vary based on factors like paid versus free and your social selling index, which is definitely something you want to pay attention to. So make sure you look at that link that was shared in the chat. And then if you're not sure which plan you should go ahead and go with, well, yes, Dux-Soup works just fine on free profiles. You need to tread a little carefully and maybe not send a message with your connection message or whatnot. But it does recommend using something like a paid version of LinkedIn, maybe Premium, maybe Career, maybe Business, maybe Sales Nav, Core, whatever it may be, or whatnot. And if you're not sure, there's free trials out there. And sometimes you can lean on a friend to get you an extended free trial in certain circumstances. And then be able to package all that up once you understand which one you want to do and package that up inside of a Dux-Soup campaign and let Dux-Soup go ahead and automate all of the activity for you. That said, that should wrap up most of the things I wanted to talk about. Let's jump to questions. Are there any questions that we want to talk about? All right, sounds like none. Okay.
There are lots. Sorry, I couldn't find my
Okay.
My little control panel disappeared. Hi, I'm here.
Perfect. How many do we have? Oh, it looks like we have quite a few.
Oh, we have some good ones here. Right, I'm going to start at the top. Paul has asked, does having a verified LinkedIn account make any difference to connection message limits?
Oh, and this is where I want to bring in my guest presenter, also known as Giles. If anything, I should be the guest. He's been here longer than I have. And Giles, if you can, I would love to hear your thoughts on some of these questions. But from what I have seen, I don't believe so. But I would also say that this goes hand in hand with what Giles says about being a good LinkedIn citizen. And so, yeah, I would say verify if you can, but at the same time, I haven't seen any direct results to say that this, if you do verify, it does lead to more connection requests. Giles, have you seen the same, or what would you say?
I completely agree with you. I think it's just purely a way for LinkedIn to stop, should we say, dummy accounts springing up. I don't think there's any direct correlation between having a verified account and how do you put it? Yeah, having a non-verified account. So yeah, I've not seen any significant difference there. No.
Thank you. I hope that's helped, Paul. Tony has asked, I have a pro version, so Dux-Soup Pro. I normally visit and send 80 to 90 connection requests a day. Am I risking being banned?
Ooh, I'll take this. Giles, keep me corrected. But yeah, I mean, if you've been able to get away with that many up until this point, I mean, I don't think that there's anything that tells you to stop. This goes back to what I was saying about how many you can send out is a gradual number that you can start to increase over, week after week after week. And so you probably have a decent amount of connections. You're probably saying the right thing to your audience that you're trying to connect with. And so they're being well recepted, which is why you're able to get away with that many connection requests. And maybe I don't even say the word get away because that sounds like you're stealing or something. Like it's just the number
I was going to say exactly that, Scott. I think what you've got there is you've got probably a relatively mature LinkedIn account. You're paying LinkedIn cold hard cash. You've warmed up. You've behaved correctly. You've warmed the account up over time. And nobody's flagging you as somebody who's spamming people. Your behavior is seen as, on that account, is seen as normal and acceptable, and you're therefore behaving within a way that is acceptable to LinkedIn. So if you're able to warm up an account to that kind of level, good on you. Go for it.
Great, thank you.
Well said.
This is from Angus. Does Dux-Soup need to visit a profile to enroll the profile in a campaign?
Shall I take that one? Because I've already answered that on the messages. So it depends where you enroll from, to be absolutely honest. Who's asked that one? I can't remember. Yeah, Angus. Yeah, it depends where you enroll from. So different LinkedIn pages, Dux-Soup can pick up different bits of information about the targets that you're enrolling. So if you're using, for example, a Sales Navigator search result or a LinkedIn search result, there's enough information on that page for Dux-Soup to be able to determine what connectivity level everybody is on that page, so it knows, okay, this is a list of second degree connections, they're all secondary, therefore I know to carry out this action in my campaign. Some of the other lists that you may use, for example, a lead list in Sales Navigator, or some of the other lists that we support, Dux-Soup may have to visit the profile in order to determine that. So it depends where you're doing it from as to whether an extra visit is required in that enrollment stage.
Thank you. Josie, do InMails sent through Sales Navigator or Recruiter show up differently in a recipient's inbox? She said, I notice I get messages sidelined in my inbox from certain people.
Yes, they do. Correct, Giles. Right. So there are circumstances where if you do send out an InMail and then maybe the person accepts your connection, if you send a connection request with that, so you're also connected with them, but an InMail was maybe sent out previously, that it could potentially show up as two conversation inboxes on your LinkedIn. Correct, Giles?
Yeah, I think so. I must admit, I get very few InMails, so I'm not in a position to say too much there. So there we go. I don't get spammed too much by them.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Now this is from Paul. He said, my SSI is 76. Is that good or bad? I believe the higher the number, the better it is from my.
Yeah, 76 is a really good number. I think, as I said in my answer there, we saw the measurements change at the beginning of 2024, and I saw mine drop from mid 60s to high 50s almost overnight as the clock ticked over to the new year. To maintain an SSI in the over 70, it does take a reasonable amount of effort and a good level of commitment and should we say effort on the side of on your LinkedIn profiles or your company profile as well, because it's everything that you do that's associated with your account that will determine that SSI. Yeah, 76 is a really good number. I don't see any much higher than that these days, to be honest.
I would agree. Yeah, I concur. I think that's a fantastic number. Try to continue on whatever it is that you're doing, right? Liking those posts, posting, whatever it may be, like continue doing that. And then utilizing Dux-Soup to ensure that you're scaling your efforts.
Yeah, firstly, Paul, I don't know if you're trying to show off, but secondly, you might want to come on here.
Yeah, there you go. Contact us later.
Yeah, well done, Paul. Nice one. This is from Jeremy. Do you find that LinkedIn also shadow bans individuals who are suspected of using automation, meaning that some posts get far less exposure even within your own network?
Giles, what do you think about that?
I've heard this term shadow banning mentioned a few times in the past. I think there's quite a lot of, it's not conspiracy theory, but there are lots of rumors about whether this is a thing or not. Now, I've seen with a number of users over the years that LinkedIn do change how visible things become on LinkedIn, whether it's your posts or whatever. And a lot of that, I think, comes from the behavior of certain people with regards promoting posts, and there are things such as post parties and those sorts of things that you can do with people who are in groups to make sure they're promoting a post, etc., within so many minutes. And there's a whole raft of information out there to read if you're looking at promoting posts and getting them higher up people's lists on their newsfeed. I personally have never seen any sort of shadow banning. I've seen people mention it, but I'm not sure it is a thing, and it's very, very difficult to prove one way or another. And as to whether that's something that LinkedIn would be able to do or not, I'm not sure. Now, one thing that people forget is how enormous LinkedIn is. LinkedIn is handling in between 8 and 10 million page requests a second. So for anybody to go in and manually monitor your page and shadow ban you as an individual without it relying on algorithms is pretty much impossible.
Yeah, I like that. That's actually really, really well said. I think, and also remembering, like, what is your purpose coming back? I mean, we're all in the conversation. We're all here to talk a little bit about LinkedIn automation to some varying level of degree, right? And Dux-Soup will not make any posts for you, right? What Dux-Soup is going to do is ensure that it automates any of your activity and outreach, right? And so with that, right, assuming you're following all of our guidelines and best tricks, then you'll be able to, work along just fine. But when it comes to some of these posts and whatnot, the general consensus is that if, like I'm using Giles's keywords here, you're being a good LinkedIn citizen. I'm in San Francisco.
I should have put copyright against that when I said
it. So it's funny. I'm in San Francisco. I'm about 2 blocks away from the LinkedIn headquarters. It's a giant, big black building. It's huge. Kind of looks like a doomsday villains area or something like that. And to what Giles is saying in terms of the number of millions of page requests that are sort of going through, it's like, don't give them a reason to set off some of these triggers, which would then entice a manual intervention, right? So try to stay away from those types of things, and to do so, follow some of our best tricks here to do that.
Okay, thank you very much. Jonah has said, I pay for Sales Nav, have 2,500 connections and have sent just under 200 requests in the last couple of days. I seem not to be hitting any limits. Can this be explained? And then he's also said, if this limit is hit, but it needs to send follow-ups, will the follow-ups that aren't in the queue still send, or that haven't already been sent, will they still send?
Yeah, so how it can be explained goes back to me showing the number of profiles. Actually, if I go back to this little, here we go. And so the connection requests here, notice how I do put a little tilde, I think that's what that icon is called, next to the 20 and the 25 there, which is meant to distinguish that it's an average, right? Now, that average can be adjusted, and everyone on this call can most likely send 20 connection requests out per day. That's a very easily manual thing to do. However, how many can you get away with, right? And so being able to increase that until you are whatever the Greek goddess was that flew too close to the sun, I think it was Achilles or something like that, until LinkedIn smacks you on the hand and says, hey, no, you can't go that far anymore, right? And be able to shoot you down. So somebody on this call said they were able to get away with 80. That's fantastic, right? What are you able to get away with? Not sure. So starting off slow and increasing over time. Giles, what would you add to that?
Yeah, you get away with again, which it's one of those things. Slow and steady wins the race. It's not. It's to coin a phrase, it's a marathon, not a sprint. It's one of those things. Good LinkedIn citizen. One thing I will mention on here, though, one thing you didn't mention earlier, well, there's 2 things actually which I'd like to mention on here. InMails. Remember, if people respond, you get your credit back. If they respond within a certain amount of time, you get your credit back. And the other one to remember is that if you're running free LinkedIn, what a lot of people see is the limit is actually the number of searches they can carry out per week or per month. that's where we have an alternative way of searching via Google. So you can use, for example, the and I've completely
X-ray.
lost what it's called. X-ray, thank you. The X-ray search to help you get around that. So that's a function, a feature which you should consider if you're intent on running free LinkedIn and you're still wanting to make sure you can carry out lots of searches. So that's just another one as well.
Cool, thank you. I'm just looking up the X-ray search. All the secrets of X-ray search. Here we go. I'll just post that in the chat as well for everybody.
Sorry, catching you on the hop there with random things, Joe. Sorry.
Here we go. Done. Send. There we go. Details about X-ray search. Let's go to the next question. Angus has asked if you get that connection message or your account's closed kind of message, Dux-Soup, does that also still come up on your LinkedIn account if you log into LinkedIn directly without logging in via Dux-Soup?
No, so usually that limit, that little sort of warning limit of saying, hey, you're out of invites for this week, it only pops up when you try and send an invite. You can actually see when that invite or when that warning was triggered by going into your Dux-Soup options and looking at your, I'm trying to remember where it is now.
I'm showing it right now on the screen.
Hopefully live. Here we go, live from San Francisco. There you are. Scott last triggered the warning on the 29th of August because it's the wrong way round, the date there, being American.
No, it's the right way. It's the right way. It's the right way.
So yeah, that's the last time Scott got that limit. And you can see there, you can snooze the robot for, in this case, it's being snoozed for 3 days. You can change that snooze option. But yeah, that's where you can check to see if you have triggered that warning and when.
And on top of that, if you guys also notice how my number of connection requests that I can send out per day, it's also set to 50. This goes back to exactly what we've been saying, kind of the thesis amongst all this, which is like, how many can you send out per day depending on what you're paying for? And I am paying for Sales Navigator, and I've been able to get away with about 50 per day on this account.
Yeah. Can you run an OpenProfile campaign with Sales Navigator with second and third degree generation profiles?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you just need to make sure you set up your skipping rules correctly. It's all documented in a blog post about 5 tricks InMails, I think it's called. 5 tricks to maximize use with InMails. I think it's in a blog post there. Basically, you set up your skipping rules to say, I'm only enrolling people with open link profiles. You go and carry out your search, you enroll, there you are. Skip if not an open link member, that's the one, thanks Scott. I narrate and the magic happens here on the screen. It's awesome. So yeah, quite simply, yeah, you can then just target those people with the open link profiles, enrolling them from there, and it will only enroll people who meet that criteria.
That's correct. Yep.
Yeah, that was from Mo. Rob has said, I understand that you can have an unlimited number of campaigns built in Dux-Soup. Is it safe to say that since there are limitations in LinkedIn, is it safe to say that the more campaigns you have, the slower the campaigns progress? That's from Rob.
Yeah, because you will always be limited by your daily limits. There's always going to be that bottleneck. So it's a case of then just how much you're going to queue up, how much you're going to put in the hopper, as it were, that's going to then come out at the end of the day. So if you've got 12 campaigns running and you're only sending 25 connection requests today, and they've all got connection requests in those campaigns, it's only going to send a couple of connection requests per campaign. So just think about how complex you need to make your life and what your priorities are. You can always turn a campaign off to pause it and then re-enable it later on. But you know, it's a case of how complex do you need to make things, how many different target audiences do you have, and where are your priorities? And that's really where the trick comes in how you prioritize things and what becomes the most important thing. Remember, if you turn a campaign on or off, you have to save it as well.
Okay, that's a good tip there. Mike has said, what do LinkedIn think of automation tools like Dux-Soup? Could they turn access off like Twitter did with third-party apps?
I mean,
go on.
I was going to say, I Giles, keep me right here, but I don't. Yeah, I mean, I assume that they could, but it's also worth mentioning the history. We've been around for it'll be what 10 years in January, I think, right?
10
With
years.
all the numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we've been doing this for quite some time, and there's been and through the Supreme Court ruling that happened in 2021 with LinkedIn and whatnot. I'm not here to put on a tinfoil hat and talk about conspiracy theories. However, with the number of with the number of users that we do have and how long we've been able to go, does show you that if you follow a lot of our guidelines and you're going this route, you should be in relatively good sense. But LinkedIn at the same time, at any moment in time, could most likely lay the hammer down. But I don't want that to scare anybody. But Giles, how would you rephrase that?
Yeah, it's a priorities thing. You know, it comes back to copyright 2023, being a good LinkedIn citizen and not abusing their platform. The thing that LinkedIn don't like are people who are spamming and people who are abusing the platform, whether that's automatically or manually. There are plenty of people doing it manually and they get banned. There's also an argument that there's a sort of a degree of tolerance from LinkedIn. And this is unproven, but you know, you also got to think about the whole situation. You know, a lot of people who are using any form of automation, they're mature users of LinkedIn, they're using it in a responsible way, and they're just trying to maximize the amazing database that it is. And a lot of those people are paying LinkedIn cold hard cash. So if LinkedIn decided to ban everybody who was using automation or even looked like they were using automation, and whether they could prove that or not is absolutely up for debate. If they were to do that and get rid of it, they would probably be hurting themselves in the pocket quite considerably. So think about that as well. It's very much a double-edged sword in that respect.
That also goes in place of the story and the narrative of my funny little joke of LinkedIn being the mafia and charging you for extortion, right? Where in the fact that like if you're paying for LinkedIn, you do get the ability to view more profiles, right? And they are aware, I would imagine that they are aware, at least anybody who's doing revenue at that company is probably seeing that, hey, you know, these organizations are utilizing potentially something like a LinkedIn automation software, but it is leading to direct sales navigator licenses. But that is conspiracy theory. I'm not able to prove that by any evidence or any means, just other than my years of being able to work in this space.
Yeah, and you need to find a new tinfoil hat.
Yeah, I'm working on that. I'm trying to build the new one. Yeah. But I will say, you know, on that note, it's like I do think that LinkedIn it's not like Dux-Soup is a company that they have not heard of. Right. So
Absolutely.
I'm sure
familiar with all of these tools. Absolutely.
Exactly. And so if they wanted to and they wanted to go that route of Twitter and be able to put the hammer down and put the foot down, they definitely could be. But why haven't they in the what 20 years that LinkedIn's been around for some extent? And LinkedIn automation has been around for just as much. So
yeah. In one form or another, absolutely.
Here's a question from Paul. Or a couple of questions. If I run a search in Sales Navigator which generates 250 leads, can I then export it directly as a CSV Excel spreadsheet from LinkedIn?
Yes, sir. Using Dux-Soup, you can go ahead and either scan and or visit those profiles by doing so. And as a quick demonstration, if you have some sort of a search or a list like this, for instance, now granted this has 50,000 results, but what you'd be able to do here is be able to scan, which will grab the surface level data of each one of these and go page by page, or you can go ahead and visit each profile, which will open up each profile, scrape all their details individually. Then will lead you to the ability to download the data, either scan data or visit data, and then you can export it and do with what you so please. You can then also re-upload it back into Dux-Soup as well.
So based on
visiting is much quicker, but you get much higher level data. You don't get the information.
Scanning.
Yeah.
Based on the second part of the question, I wonder if he's doing that already, and actually wondering whether you can get that data directly from LinkedIn rather than via Dux-Soup.
It depends on who the people are on that list. If they're first degree connections, you can download your data from LinkedIn, and you can get a lot of data if you just go and download your your data file from your LinkedIn account. If you're not connected with those people, then no, there is no way to do that from LinkedIn.
Okay.
It's actually really good. If I can touch 2 seconds on this, because a lot of people aren't aware of this. What Giles just mentioned is actually really, really huge. So when you're on your actual LinkedIn profile, if you click on your Me section here, you go to Settings and Privacy, and then on the left-hand side it says Data Privacy. You can hit Get a Copy of Your Data. You can then choose which information you want, and I think I have, Scott's Dux-Soup data. Here we go. I think, yeah, here we go. So these are all my connections, right? And it will give you the URLs and everything of that moment in time and when you connected with them. Also some other information of like all the invites you've sent out and all these other things. So that can be helpful in different reasons and purposes.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah, it's handy to see that, I think. Luke has said, is there any way to have more automated connection requests per day if you're using Sales Navigator?
Just warm it up over time. Just warm it up over time. So I did a test last year. I started at 25 invites a day. Week 2, I did 30. Week 3, I did 35. I slowly increased it up. And after sort of 8 to 10 weeks, having triggered one warning, I was running at 65 invites a day. No problems at all. I could have gone further, but at that stage, I proved that I tested what I wanted to do. I now remember I've got Sales Navigator. I've had Sales Navigator for over 5 years, and I got, I don't know, 4,000 or 5,000 first-degree connections, something like that. And I was, making sure I was active on LinkedIn in various aspects, commenting on people's posts. I wasn't just sending connection requests. I was doing other stuff as well.
And I mimic that exact thing that Giles just mentioned. I actually started working for Dux-Soup, which has been now 6 months, 7 months, I think. But I've been using the tool since 2018.
March, I think it was, yeah.
Yeah, something like that. That said, though, if you take a look at my personal account here, right, you can see that my connection requests are up to 65 per day. I had bumped that up to 85. I think I got away with it for a little bit of time, but that's when LinkedIn was like, ha ha ha, you are Achilles, you flew too close to the sun, we're going to knock you back down. Now, if the process here is that when that happened, I can then lather, rinse, repeat like a bottle of shampoo, and then try this process one more time to see if I can get away with a little bit more, like maybe 70 or 75, something like that. And you can do that process again.
And I see that Luke's just asked how you do that. So if you can just show how you can increase your request per day. So under your Dux-Soup settings, under the throttling settings, make sure you have the advanced menu enabled or the expert menu enabled in Dux-Soup. And then you can make sure you got the expert user type here.
Let me show real quick, if you don't mind. Yeah, Giles, not to cut you off. So yeah, if you click on the extension up here in the top right-hand corner, there's a little tiny cogwheel up here, right? You click there, and if you see this menu where there's only 3 options available to you, make sure you turn it into expert mode by clicking on user and then clicking on the expert section there. Once you do that, you'll be granted with a bunch more features up here at the top. Now, most of these features are redundant as that the Dux Dash already covers them for you. However, there are some that you want to take a look at, like the throttling. So when you select throttling down here at the bottom, you can actually now check this little box and change it to whatever you'd like.
Very succinctly put. Thank you.
Sorry,
wow.
I didn't mean that. I was.
Whilst you're in there, Luke also asked, how did Scott get into that setting menu with seeing the triggered warning? So that's there as well.
Yep. So I'll do that one more time, right? So for some, if not many people on this call, because it is set by default, when you download Dux-Soup for the first time, right, the extension's up here in the right-hand corner. There's a little cogwheel, click there. You may see a menu that looks very simplified. Just turn it to expert mode. I like to make a joke. It's like putting your Crocs into sport mode. It's a joke, but anyways, when you put it over there, you put it into expert mode. Then over here, there's an area called Actions, Skipping, Throttling, Connect, Planner, User, Browser. Go ahead and go to the Throttling tab. Then on the Throttling tab, you'll be able to see LinkedIn invitation limit, where you can now change the date. Also, I want to comment while I'm in here, under the Browser tab is where you can turn on record profile data, which is going to be important if you want to scrape profiles and be able to download it for later. So I'll ensure that you do have that turned on. But yeah.
Okay. Right, answered that one. This is Himvar. I'm a long on and off follower admirer of Dux-Soup. LinkedIn's algorithm is getting more and more advanced, and with AI wave riding. What does the management team at Dux-Soup think about long-term relevance of automation tools? I'm going to fire this at Giles. Thoughts?
Yeah, I think we've covered quite a lot of that already, and yeah, we're seeing a lot of an evolution, should we say, of LinkedIn with AI. I mean, they changed their terms of use, or they've announced they're going to change their terms of use, so you can opt in or opt out of the AI features that they're now creating, unless of course you're in the EU, in which case it's not GDPR compliant apparently. So they're turning it off anyway for EU citizens. Yeah, I mean, LinkedIn are always evolving. You know, it's owned by Microsoft. They're going to continue to evolve that platform. I mean, it's not just about automating your outreach. You know, remember what Dux-Soup is trying to do here. It's trying to be a time saver for you. You know, it's taking away that repetitive, mundane copy paste of a message that you're performing day in, day out. And so it's going to take away a lot of that heavy lifting stuff. You can just set it on autopilot depending on which version you've got. If you've got Turbo or Cloud, then you can literally set it on autopilot and let it go while you go off and do something a bit more constructive with your time. But there's also many other facets to Dux-Soup as well now. We've seen the product evolve over the 9.5, nearly 10 years that Dux-Soup's been in business. We had the very basic Pro version, which is now then, 5 years later, it became the Turbo version with a campaign and then subsequently the API and all that sort of stuff. So there's also then a lot of data integration possibilities available with other platforms. You know, your CRM, having your messages appearing in different places wherever you require them, and helping you to sort of integrate your lead generation activities, not just being reliant upon LinkedIn, but then using other facilities, other platforms as well. So think of this as a part of your sort of, your tech stack, as it were, depending on what platform you're using and how you're using it. You know, there is a very simple business case for pro users. Boom, it's cheap, it's efficient, and I can just go boom, boom, boom and send out connection requests or direct messages. But there's so much more to it, especially when you sort of peel back the layers and start using Turbo and Cloud and all of the integrations that are available.
Yeah, and I'm going to need to hop to another call here in just a second, but I do want to add to that a little bit in understanding that I am a previous Dux-Soup user, now work for the company, and have built a company that has about 116, I think now, profiles with Dux-Soup underneath it, of real people that we do manage, and being able to hook Dux-Soup up to many different things, and anything is possible, right? Now, one of the things I've always admired about Dux-Soup is it's sort of like watch what other people are doing, then implement at a later time. So we did not jump on the bandwagon and of just slapping on AI on the back of our bumper sticker and being able to say, like, this is what we do have. We take our time with it to make sure that this is something that our customers do want, and how do they want it. In the meantime, we have done a great job at being able to create our tool to easily hook up to other AI platforms. I can speak for myself, as I have hooked up our system up to a Slack integration that also is hooked up to a ChatGPT to be able to give you thoughts and ideas on how to respond to people. All this can be done either through custom code or easier ways like Zapier, or even native integrations that we already have existingly. So yeah, well put, Giles. And things will be coming in the future associated with that, but it is interesting to see for sure.
One other point there I noticed on the question that came in there, as I said about the Facebook group. Why is your Facebook group not as active as it should be? Well, it's actually quite a good point. It's something that I see generally is, Facebook groups go in and out of fashion, and yeah, at the moment the users are relatively quiet on there, but it's down to the users to make it an active community. It's there for the users to use. And you do sometimes see Facebook groups become almost dormant. It's a bit like LinkedIn groups as well. You've seen the same with many LinkedIn groups. There are tens of thousands, maybe even more LinkedIn groups, 90% of which are dormant. Now, if people start to use the Facebook group more, then it will start to appear more in your newsfeed, and it'll get more traction. So it's down to the users to make use of that and interact with each other by that medium.
Yeah, thank you. I'm aware that Scott needs to jump off to a user support call. Are you okay to carry on, Giles?
I'm happy to carry on, Scott. You go do your thing.
Fabulous. So Angus has said, my SSI is 66. My lowest component is finding the right people. How do I improve that component?
So that sounds to me, and without looking at it in detail, I'm just going to sort of a little bit of speculation here, but finding the right people, that implies to me that your connection acceptance rate is not as high as it perhaps could be. And in other words, the sorts of people that you're approaching with connection requests, you're not getting you could be achieving a higher acceptance rate. That's what I would recommend there. You know, work on narrowing down those search criteria, engaging with people via your campaigns, via your activity, whether you're a Dux-Soup user or not. You know, if you're not achieving at least a 15% acceptance rate from your campaigns, then you're doing something wrong, to be honest. And to be honest, 25% is very, very achievable from an acceptance rate point of view. And if you're not achieving that, then that would be an indication there that perhaps that's something you need to work on.
I think also it might be a good idea to kind of have a little play with your connection messaging. So we've got a few articles. I'll dig them out while Giles goes through another question. Yeah. But there's different ways.
Just to add to that as well, while you're looking at the next those articles, anecdotally, and it's very much I think certain parts of the world, we're seeing quite good acceptance rates from blank connection requests at the moment. People are getting more and more using you know, not putting any text in their connection request and relying on the strength of their profile pages to get connections. You know, making sure that they've got all of the making use of all the latest functionality that's available there on your LinkedIn profile page. Ultimately, you want that, I would say, about the 3 phases. You want people to visit your profile, connect with you, and then get into a conversation. So the first one is that visit. If you can get them to visit your profile and your profile looks good, you've given yourself a much better chance. Sometimes the content of that connection request isn't so important. A few years ago, it was incredibly important if you look at the statistics. But anecdotally, I'm hearing not always now.
I would suggest, rather than me dig out all the articles, Angus, I would suggest if you have a look on our blog pages and just type in the search function connection, then it brings up loads of articles. So obviously you know what's happening better than we do in terms of how you're writing and your style. So have a look through some of those articles, because I think there'll be a couple there that'll be really useful for you.
Just to point out, actually, I had a horrendous connection request today, which made me laugh. You know, it was so badly written, they'd been better off sending me a blank connection request. So if you're going to write a connection request, make sure it's a good one.
Yeah. Is there a way to find out, this is Eric, sorry, is there a way to find out how many connection requests I have sent versus those accepted, so I can understand what my success rate is really?
It depends. I mean, if you've got Dux-Soup Turbo or Cloud, then yeah, you can see that in your funnel flow. So yeah, you can see your acceptance rates against your campaigns that way. The only other way, if you're using Pro or doing this manually, is to check to see your sent connections. So you can go in and have a look at your sent connections in LinkedIn, and then just monitor your new connections or the total number of connections that you have on a regular basis. Maybe you go in and just check the number every week, and you check to see how many connection requests you're sending out. Yeah, it's as literally unscientific as that. But yeah, I mean, if you're using Dux-Soup Turbo or Cloud, then it will give you the statistics per campaign and per date range.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Jim asks, oh, I like this question. How do you distinguish a follower from a connection? In other words, is there a way to have followers versus connections?
Sorry, yeah, can you say that again?
Is there, how do you distinguish a follower from a connection? I think this might be semantics.
Who was the question from?
This is from Jim.
Jim, how do you distinguish a follower from a connection? In other words, is there a way to have followers versus connections? I heard there are limits to connections. Yes. Okay. So yeah, people can follow you without being a connection. So you can go and follow people. You can just go to their profile, press the follow button, and you can even automate that with Dux-Soup, with Pro, with Turbo, and with Cloud. So you can follow people, and then you will get their posts and their information on your newsfeed. So you can actually go in and see. You can look at if you go to the left-hand side on your LinkedIn page, you can go to connections. You can look at followers, and there will sometimes be a difference, because some people who connect with you may then unfollow you if they don't want to see what you're posting. It does happen. They want to stay connected, but they don't want to be bothered by your posts. People can pick and choose what they want to see. So there will always be a difference between the people who are following you and the people who are connected to you, depending upon what the situation is. If you connect with somebody, by default, you follow them. So remember that as well.
Okay, thank you. Mo asked, how do you save campaigns?
You just literally click on the save button at the bottom. I don't have my screen set up at the moment, but yeah, if I just very quickly try and sort out my screen here a second so I can share my screen. Bear with me 1 second. Oh, I don't think I'm a presenter, so I don't think I can.
Okay.
Maybe I can make myself a presenter. There we go.
Yeah,
Show my screen. There we go. Hopefully you can see my screen now. Can you?
yes.
Excellent. So if we go to our Dux dash here, which we get to by clicking on our extension, I can go to the Dux dash here, go to our drip campaigns on the left-hand side. Whenever you create a new campaign, yeah, you just go in and you give it whatever your name is, blah, 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 blah. You put your message in here, you put your connection request in here, you put your text in here, and then you just press the save button. It's as simple as that. And that's how quickly we can save a campaign.
Yeah, thank you. Hope that helped, Mo. We've still got another few. Let's have a look.
I see a question from Kim. I'm going to jump on that one just because I saw it. When Dux-Soup scrapes data from second or third degree connections, does that data include contact information such as phone and email? So if you're visiting second and third degree connections, it depends upon what people have made visible. You can determine your profile, your privacy settings in your LinkedIn account, and you can determine, or each user determines whether that information is visible or not. You can get Dux-Soup to do an email lookup if you're wanting email addresses of non-first degree connections, and you can do that via the Dux points system. So that's something to look at if you're desperate for email addresses. Remember, if somebody becomes a first degree connection, you can usually see much more contact information. So if you're looking for telephone numbers and email addresses, the best thing to do is to connect with people and then view their profile, because then you can see more information. Dux-Soup literally only looks at data that is available on LinkedIn. It does not gather data from any other third-party sources.
Okay. Him has come back with, what does finding the right people mean? So we were talking about that a few minutes ago in terms of connecting. Please explain with an example. This is the same problem for me as well, and I much appreciated the previous answer.
Finding the right people. Yeah, so it's literally just making sure you're carrying out a search. We've got a really good blog post about, if you go into the blog posts and you type in the word filter, you'll find there at the top a blog post which goes through all of the search and filter criteria that you can use in the regular LinkedIn search and the Sales Navigator search. Make use of all of them. Make sure you're using as many filters as possible to make sure you're narrowing down that search group or that search result as much as possible. You will then have more levels of success, or greater levels of success. Also be aware and sometimes have a look through that search result, because the spurious nature sometimes of LinkedIn's search criteria, that you sometimes end up with random people appearing because keywords appear in strange places sometimes. So it's sometimes worth sense checking a list before you go headlong in and enroll everybody into a campaign. But yeah, have a play around with it and think about all of those criteria. Search criteria, filtering, and then the other one is have a look at all the different lists that you can use. So there's another blog post. If you go to the blog post and you type in lists, that gives you all of the different lists that Dux-Soup supports as well. It's a really, really useful resource. We're always looking at different lists that we can support. So for example, in relation to a webinar we did 8 weeks ago around newsletters, we now support, for example, a list of newsletter subscribers. If you own that list, Dux-Soup, you can run against those sorts of lists as well.
Yeah, I've just sent those 2 articles out that you referred to in the chat.
I tried to talk long enough for you to be able to find them.
You did a good job. I keep losing my my little questions box. There's one from Catherine I wanted to ask you. She says, I'm having some issues getting setting up my connection request campaigns. I think I need help with the extension settings and options. What would be the best thing for me to do? She's actually asked for some training videos. Are there any suggestions?
Yeah, there's a great getting started with Dux-Soup video. Unfortunately, Catherine's left, so if we can grab her email address, if we can get that answer to her via email, and if needs be, we could just set up a demo call with her. You know, do a 20-minute demo call with her. That'd be absolutely fine, no problems at all.
Okay, perfect. I'll also remind her about next week's session. Josie, now I can't work out if this is a question or if this is an observation as a follow-up to my previous message.
Josie, as a follow-up to my message on...
Is Josie
still
with?
Yeah. Right, okay, yeah, it's just a comment, I think, yeah.
Yeah, so, and finally, Jeremy, have you considered providing automation for sending invites to follow company pages?
So you can send so many of those directly from a company page per month or whatever it is. Yes. Now, we did a webinar on this, getting paid people to follow your company page and enroll into your newsletter. We did a webinar about 6 weeks ago, myself and Beth, one of our colleagues, did that webinar. We can only automate actions from an individual's LinkedIn account. There's no such thing as a company page insofar as you don't log on to a company page. You have rights to administer a company page. So we can only automate actions on behalf of an individual. If you can get that follow LinkedIn, if you can get that follow URL, you can put that into messages and send that out with Dux-Soup. No problems at all. And that we covered in a webinar, say about 6 weeks ago. And I think it's on the website already. And Ron's asked, how do I set up a demo call? Ping a message to our support team and they will send you the link so you can get one booked, Ron.
There we go. We've gone through all the questions.
The email address will be on the, oh, I haven't got the slides. So do you want me to?
You haven't.
Bear with me 1 second. Bear with me 1 second. I've got them here. If you can bear with me 1 second. Where were we? Show screen. It's all seamless, as you can see. It's all very well rehearsed, everybody. Thank you for bearing with us. The remaining. There we go. Cool. I'll pass back over to Joe. Finish off.
Do it. Yeah, so just a reminder, I can already see we've got about 15 people already registered for the demo sessions for the workshops, which is great. But if you missed my introduction at the start of the session, then here's a quick recap. So starting next week, we're introducing our live Get Started with Dux-Soup workshop series, where we will be taking you through the entire free trial cycle so you get the best out of your 14-day free experience. These sessions will differ from our webinars like today because we'll actually be walking you through all the tasks, activities and exercises. So it's like we're hand-holding you through the whole show. We'll go through how to install and set up Dux-Soup, search and visit LinkedIn profiles, collect prospect lists, set up auto connect actions and start creating a campaign. And we'll do all of these things with you, as I said, live. Those sessions, usually you pay for them, they're just under $80 an hour. And this will be free. There are 2 time slots available. One is at 4 p.m. GMT on Tuesday, and the other one is 8 p.m. GMT on Thursday. And we will follow up the following week with part 2 of the workshop, which looks at all the advanced features that will be available. So the whole idea is you register for your free trial, and within 10 days, you've gone through every possible aspect. And the reason for this really is there are so many people that, you register for a free trial and then you forget to use it, and then your free trial's out and you haven't used the tool, or you haven't used it to its fullest extent. So we want to walk you through that process. So yeah, come and join us. The links I've put in the chat about 16,000 times what we've been talking, but I will add them in again so that it's right there, and they will be up on the website as well. So yeah, that's about the workshops.
Oh, that's part 1 and part 2. So yeah, there we go, 2 slides. Just to touch on then, if you are stuck with Dux-Soup, we have our amazing supports team who back us up all the way through. they're available Monday through Friday via our support portal. We've got a website. You can access it there. If they can't answer your question virtually, then we would set up a support call with either myself or Scott. If you have a specific requirement and you're trying to solve a certain problem, you're trying to maybe build an integration, or you're trying to set up something in Zapier or Make or whatever, you can set up either a booster session, which would normally be a getting started session, sort of a bit of a training, get you up and running, get you up to speed. That would be a booster session. If you're needing more advanced help, then you can always book a technical session as well. But as Joe's just said, we are doing these workshops in the coming weeks to see how well received those are, and trying to give people the maximum benefit, especially from that free trial opportunity, and make sure people get the most out of that and understand how everything works, and whether that process can work with your business.
Yeah, absolutely. Fabulous, thank you. And as always, we love hearing your reviews. I've just popped the G2 review link in the chat as well. So if you want to leave us a review on how we've done today, or you've been using the tool and you want to share comments, then please do. And we still have some limited edition caps available, so they can be winging their way to you if you put today's date on there. And that's it, I think. I do believe all that's left is to say thank you for those of you who are still here. Obviously, we've gone over time, but only because we had some great questions. Hope it's been helpful for everybody, and we will hopefully see a lot of you next week on our free trial workshop.
Excellent. Thanks, everyone. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.